I've talked about the US role in the ongoing crisis in Myanmar, which is now an armed crisis. I've talked about how the US and the British government built up the opposition over many decades, built up Aung San Suu Kyi and the National League for Democracy as a client regime they fully intended to install into power. In 2016, they did install it into power. And not just sending millions and millions of dollars into Myanmar to build up the political party and also this vast network of so-called civil society to support it and media networks to help sway public opinion in Myanmar. It also turns out that Aung San Suu Kyi herself had this entourage of foreigners advising her. And I already talked about one of them, Sean Turnell. But there was another one pointed out to me by a viewer. His name is Joseph Fisher, and he was a staffer at the UK Embassy in Myanmar. And then while still working for the UK Foreign Office, he was also concurrently serving as Aung San Suu Kyi's advisor. So I'm going to show you this very bizarre story. I'm going to show you how bad this actually was, and then I think you will understand, if you don't already, why Myanmar's military thought it was necessary to oust this government from power and to take control of the country. This is Frontier Myanmar. This is an opposition newspaper. This article is from 2016. 2016's most influential people, and of course at the top of the list is Aung San Suu Kyi. As an opposition newspaper, they support and admire Aung San Suu Kyi. But then there's this very, very bizarre part down here. The foreign advisors, shadow men. You won't see them in the state newspapers or responding to NP questions, but rest assured they're there working away in the shadows. They're these advisors with close relations to Aung San Suu Kyi. They've established themselves as important players in the reform agenda of the government. Could you imagine any newspaper anywhere in the world being so casual about foreigners directly involved in policy making inside a country, a supposedly sovereign country, especially a country that had suffered under imperialism, under British rule? Now let's listen. There's more. The most well-known of these is probably Sean Turnell, the Australian economist. And he's provided much needed input on economic reform. So this is saying that people in Myanmar are incapable of coming up with economic policy on their own. There's also Robert San Pei, a Hong Kong-based lawyer who has worked with Aung San Suu Kyi for several years. It's very strange how Aung San Suu Kyi depends on all of these foreigners to advise her, why she is unable to find people in Myanmar to advise her. The government has not keen to play up their role. Foreign involvement in decision-making is dangerous territory, and any perception that the government is beholden to foreign interests would be toxic. It is totally beholden to foreign interests, completely. National League for Democracy from top to bottom, built up by US government and British government funding, and also open society funding. All of the NGOs, all of the media supporting Aung San Suu Kyi and her political party, funded by foreign powers. They are completely beholden to foreign powers. They would not exist without them. And then they talk about Joseph Fisher, a former diplomat at the British Embassy in Yangon, who advises Aung San Suu Kyi. And they're saying that he was accused of being a British spy, but whether he was a spy or not, what difference does it make? He's a former British embassy staffer now advising the leader of the country in a former British colony. Nobody sees what the issue is there at Frontier Myanmar. And then there's this other article from Myanmar Times. This is from 2015. Claims on social media that a British spy is working as a political advisor to Aung San Suu Kyi have been dismissed by the National League for Democracy as a ridiculous smear campaign ahead of the elections. National League for Democracy officials denied that Mr. Fisher worked for the party and said that he worked directly for Aung San Suu Kyi to promote her development projects. Down here, on his LinkedIn account, he, Joseph Fisher, describes himself as International Development Liaison Officer at Office of Da Aung San Suu Kyi. He also coordinates interviews with the foreign media for the National League for Democracy leader. And then this part is even worse. British Ambassador Andrew Patrick told the Myanmar Times that Mr. Fisher was taking unpaid leave. That means he was working for the British government. He was working for the Foreign Office while advising Aung San Suu Kyi. Aung San Suu Kyi had a British government employee advising her, telling her what to do, basically. He was on break from the Foreign Office on the condition that he does not engage in a party political activity. He denied the accusation posted on Facebook that Mr. Fisher was paid by the UK government. Whether he was being paid or not, he still was working for the British government at the time. He's on unpaid leave, but he's still working for them. And then if you go through the article, it's just this bizarre excuse, all of these bizarre excuses as to why Aung San Suu Kyi has all these foreigners surrounding her, advising her. And then as I was researching this, I came across this 2012 video where Aung San Suu Kyi is reading cue cards for USAID, talking about where she thinks USAID money should be spent. But of course, the decision was already made. She was reading cue cards given to her by USAID about where that money was going to go. And if you're wondering where it was going, it goes to things like this, even though this is more recent, 2019, but this is the sort of thing USAID funds. They don't build bridges or roads or railways or anything that Myanmar actually needs to move forward into the future. They're investing in things that will help divide and destroy the country. The USAID launches a program worth $72 million to strengthen civil society. That means fake NGOs, the media, the extension of Western corporate media into Myanmar's media and information space, and local communities, which means getting local communities to depend on US-backed opposition groups and USAID itself, and not on the central government. So in other words, promoting division in the country. So I just thought I would point this out. I still have people trying to argue that the military in Myanmar had no right to oust the government headed by Aung San Suu Kyi. They're saying that it was a democratically elected government. It clearly was not democratically elected. It is entirely a product of foreign interference. Democracy is a process of self-determination. Everything about Aung San Suu Kyi's government clearly was determined in Washington. She's reading cue cards from the USAID. She has white men around her as advisors determining her policy for Myanmar and its future. This is the most brazen example of modern-day imperialism and colonialism that you could possibly find. It could not possibly be worse. There's white guys walking around in Myanmar determining policy for Myanmar's future. This is why Myanmar's military had to step in and oust this government from power. And what's even worse is that now these US-backed groups, they're getting weapons, they've got matching uniforms, they're going to go out and fight the central government. People are going to die, infrastructure will be destroyed, and all just to get someone like Aung San Suu Kyi and her foreign advisors back into power. If you thought this video was useful, please like and share it. Think about subscribing. It's free to do and it helps the channel grow. Look in the video description for the links I discussed in this video, as well as for ways to help support my work so that I can continue doing videos like this. And as always, thank you for watching.